At the time of Second World War, the United States was the first country to manufacture nuclear weapons, and is the only country to have used them in combat. The creation of nuclear weapons arose from scientific and political developments of the 1930s. The decade saw many new discoveries about the nature of atoms, including the existence of nuclear fission. J. Robert Oppenheimer was an American theoretical physicist. Oppenheimer was the wartime head of the Los Alamos Laboratory, and is among those who are credited with being the father of the atomic bomb for their role in the Manhattan Project. For Oppenheimer, joining the war effort was not merely a matter of patriotism. He believed that stopping fascism was a matter of saving Western civilization itself. Soon after the American entry into the war, he was appointed leader of the Manhattan Project. In early 1942, Manhattan was the code name for the American project, set up in 1942 to develop an atom bomb. After several years, their efforts proved fruitful. On July 16, 1945, the first ever atomic bomb was detonated at Alamogordo, New Mexico. Oppenheimer was largely credited with the success of the Manhattan Project because of his successful leadership. Just after 3 weeks of successful detonation of nuclear bomb, in August 1945, 2 atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki by United States Army, which ultimately pushed the Japanese to surrender.
The United States detonated 2 nuclear weapons over the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August the 6th and 9th, 1945. The attack was carried with the consent of the United Kingdom as required by the Quebec Agreement, killing between 129,000 and 226,000 people, most of whom were civilians.
When Oppenheimer comes to know that 2 cities of Japan have been nuclear attacked, he was in an interview showing his reaction and talking about the attack on mankind. Listen to this, his own words.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that, one way or another.
What were the impacts and consequences? The enormous blast of atomic bombs creates thermal radiation. This effect was caused by extremely high temperatures and starts fires miles from the epicenter of the explosion. Also, the explosion also creates radiation effects. This radiation causes burns to any exposed skin, severity depending on distance from the epicenter. The radiation effect was the result of the gamma rays created by the fission of atoms. Radiation causes death and injury through damage to living tissue. Survivors of the bombs were injured mostly by the thermal. These bombs brought an unprecedented level of death and destruction never before seen from the efforts of a single bomber. Hiroshima city's original population of 400,000 was immediately reduced by at least a fourth when the bomb exploded. Official statistics state that as of September 1, 1945, 70,000 had died from the bomb, not counting the missing or incinerated bodies. 130,000 people were wounded, and 43,000 critically wounded. Nagasaki, being less densely populated, reported 70,000 dead by January following the bomb, which would double in the next 5 years, adding up to approximately 75% of the city's population. All persons and animals within a kilometer of the epicenter were instantly killed, and those within 250 meters were completely incinerated. These bombs destroyed all of the living in entire cities, and is therefore seen as Japanese genocide because of the devastation to the existing communities and environment. Incredible levels of suffering and injury induced by the bomb made the survivors unlucky. Those that did not die from the explosion found themselves instantly naked, because the thermal radiation instantly incinerated their clothing. Those not under cover suffered immediate burns to the back and extremity, which survivors held out from their bodies to avoid the painful friction as they lumbered to the hospitals and care centers that were not burned to the ground. About half of the survivors saved by the rescue parties died within the next few days. The blast and thermal radiation effects not only took many lives, but also destroyed any and all infrastructure in its path, leaving these cities with nothing. The pressure from the blast shattered all of the windows and doors of buildings within several kilometers. Virtually all buildings in a kilometer radius of the epicenter were set on fire due to the thermal radiation. The fires quickly spread, as the explosion left no water for the victims to drink. As if this wasn't bad enough, the blast created a gust of wind, effectively spreading the fire throughout the city. The bombing of Nagasaki, for example, destroyed 14,000 homes and seriously damaged 5,400, leaving only 12% unaffected. International effects of WWII and the bombing. The death toll of WWII ranged from 40 to 60 million people. At least 2 million Japanese died from the war, and about 300,000 from the atomic bomb. Since the first use of atomic weapons, many organizations have sprang up in opposition of their use. A movement against the nuclear weapons, called the Stockholm Appeal, was started in 1950, with the threat of their use in the Korean War. Since then, it is estimated by the UN General Secretary that there are between 40,000 to 50,000 nuclear weapons stockpiled around the world as soon as 1980. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe for more.